In Hollywood, she's known as the script doctor with hits like Sister Act, Soul Food, and Dreamgirls under her belt.
But now she's going back to her roots to embody Coretta Scott King in the new play, Coretta. Tina Andrews, welcome to Arise 360.
Well, thank you for having me.
You look fabulous. This hair is everything. Work, girl, work. Fashion Week.
That's right.
I'm telling you.
Working it on and off the stage.
Truly,
So you have to tell us about this new play. It's a one-woman play called Coretta, and of course you're channeling Dr. Martin Luther King's wife. What parts of her life do you tackle?
Well, I'm actually going to tackle most of it. I'm going to go from her picking cotton in Marion, Alabama, through to Antioch College, where she dated a black guy and, are we ready? And a white guy.
No, she did.
Yes,
she's diverse.
She did.
An interracial relationship back then?
in the late 40s.
Wow.
In the late 40s. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's why that relationship didn't last.
Yeah, it was unheard of and illegal.
Well, well, she was at Antioch in Yellow Springs, Ohio.
Oh, it was
so she was up north. And then I'm going to take her to the New England Conservatory of Music, which is, of course, where she met Dr. King, who was studying for his doctorate at Boston College. And we're going to go through that relationship through his death and the 30 years after his death, when she formed the Martin Luther King Center, and she got his birthday to become celebrated as a holiday, and took a co-conspirator in his assassination to court and won. And that's the information that most people don't know.
I didn't know that. Did
so
you know
much
that?
all today. No.
There you go.
Wow.
So why did you want to take on this project?
You know, this is the third of a trilogy of indomitable black women that I have written as plays. And every time I have tackled any one of those women, they have come to me. And Mrs. King, it was sort of out of the blue last summer, just said, all the information, what are you going to do with it? You're not going to just sit on it. I was doing a CBS miniseries at one point on her life, and she died. And I had all of this information that's just been sitting there, because after I came back from her funeral, I simply couldn't work on her story anymore. Because she died the same year as my mother. There was a whole transition that happened for me in 2006, so that material just sat there until last summer. And she said, come on, girl, let's just get it done.
Wow.
Yeah, it was one of those
something
things.
in you reawakened.
I'm channeling her. I get on stage sometimes. Now, thank God I have written the play, because there are times when I'll get on stage and open my mouth and she will have me say something that I didn't write down that means that it needs to become a part of the play.
Wow, it sounds like a very spiritual journey for you.
It really is.
So what is the pressure like to pull off a one-woman play when you're the only person to rely on stage? And why did you decide to make this a one-woman play?
Well, as I said, it came to me in that form. For some reason, it ceased to be a miniseries. The networks are not doing that. I think HBO and the cable companies tend to be doing that.
Right.
And it didn't speak to me as a film. And there are a ton of Martin Luther King movies that are in the works. It came to me as a one-woman piece, particularly since I've got her on tape talking about her life. And so the inflections are there, and how it took me forever to get her to admit that she even dated anybody before before Dr. King.
How did you go about convincing her to tell you that little nugget of gossip?
It wasn't so much that. I know that she is very proud, and she is the keeper of his legacy. But when this woman was alive, she was probably one of the most beautiful women you would ever meet. And at the time I met her, she was 71, and I began to weep. I was so embarrassed. I was weeping next to her.
Really? Why?
Well, I'm on her shoulders. I felt that I would not be able to be an executive producer and a writer and to deliver projects to the network if she and Dr. King hadn't struggled in the way that they did. And she was sitting there with this powder blue outfit on, and all the makeup and not a hair out of place. And I started to I sort of started to weep, and I said, you are absolutely gorgeous. So in the day when he met you, must have been killing him. And she laughed. I always could make her laugh. And so I said, so who were you seeing before Dr. King? So she, we don't need to discuss. I said, because I know the men were lined up. And it took me sort of 5 months. And then she, one day, in telling the Antioch story, she didn't give me names. So she would say, when there was a young man, okay, and then there was another young man.
And the story unraveled.
So and I was, and again, because I absolutely loved her. I keep it. I understand how important it is for her to not diminish in any way Dr. King's legacy. So it is not exploitive in any way.
What did you come to learn about her that we may not know?
That she was a feminist who argued with him because he was the last chauvinist on the planet. Oh my God. Dr.
Martin Luther King was a chauvinist?
Oh, do tell.
No way.
It was one of those things where she had to remind, there was not one woman on the March on Washington, not one woman scheduled to speak. And she said, "Are you kidding me? Do you know how many women?" First of all, there was a woman who got all the slaves who was getting slaves out of the South through the Underground Railroad. Thank you.
Thank you.
There were the one he came to fame because Rosa Parks, a woman, refused to give up her seat on the bus. Women were in those boycotts and women were at the sit-ins and got arrested right along with the men. And she had to constantly remind him of that. There were very few women that were really a part of the civil rights movement in a meaningful way in terms of the people who were called upon to speak. And she had to keep reminding him, excuse me, but 50% of the population is also going through this struggle, so represent us.
Wow,
so I love that about her. She was very feisty, not the buttoned-up woman that we all know.
Right,
because
we usually see her depicted. She's very reserved,
Yes.
very quiet, very solemn.
Yes.
But you're saying there was a little fire
Well,
there.
but that is what she presented to the public. Now, we all know that when you peel the onion skin, or when you pull back the curtain and you're in a marriage, it's something else.
Well, they say next to every great man is a great woman.
And this was a great woman.
And you spoke about some of the other great women that you've done stories on. I know we met when you were working on the story of Sally Hemings, my great-great-great-great-great-grandmother, who is the mistress or the love interest of Thomas Jefferson at the time. So how did that 6-year journey change your life?
Oh my God, Shannon, there was one point where I didn't know if I was going to be able to leave my home and there wouldn't be something on the doorstep, either somebody going off on me or phone calls or someone celebrating me. When the piece finally came out, it was a total celebration, as you know, of that relationship, and it changed people's opinions about it. He was very flawed, and I brought out all of those flaws in the story. But I also felt that story fell in that gray 1%, where 99% of the relationships are coercive. And that relationship, he was deeply conflicted, deeply conflicted. And so,
what troubled him the most?
Well, I mean, how do you justify owning 235 slaves, and the one slave that you have this deep affection for is your dead wife's half-sister, and she looked like the half-sister. He was a widower, so he wasn't committing adultery. So this wasn't, the Bill Clinton sort of thing. He had someone that he could teach again. He got his wife back, is what happened. So that was
she
a very
was just
human.
More of a chocolate version.
Slightly, and only slightly chocolate.
Right.
Only slightly
because
more
she
chocolate.
was under those terms. She was a quadroon.
Okay.
So that meant that she actually looked really white.
Okay.
And so there was this much color in here. I just insisted for the miniseries that we bring in someone that you could tell was an actress of color, and then gave her Diane Carroll as her mother.
And it was the most successful miniseries in CBS history.
Yes.
Very successful.
Listen, I've been a part, as an actress, I was in Roots, so I knew what that felt like if you do it right. I knew that the people would come out and watch it. And also I knew that they'd be moved to either go to their history books and research, or they would change their opinions about that entire situation. And certainly I feel that I successfully changed a lot of minds.
Let's talk about Days of Our Lives.
Oh my God.
Valerie Grant, the interracial kiss that caused a firestorm.
I lost my job, I will tell you.
And they made you do it.
Tell us this story, my
I
goodness.
had the first interracial relationship on daytime television. Obviously, Nichelle Nichols had the first interracial relationship in prime time on Star Trek.
On Star Trek,
And
correct.
I knew when that script came in, I was on the show a couple of years. When the script came in, naturally it was a show that was going to air on a Friday, because they make you wait over the weekend. And the two of them kissed. And we changed the choreography of the kiss. At first they were going to have him kiss me so that his head was to camera, so that
blocking.
and then you wouldn't really see the lips come together. And I adored Richard Guthrie, and we knew that we were doing something quite provocative.
Right. That's an understatement.
He was terrific to work with, and we kissed dead on. And they couldn't stop tape in those days. When you filmed a soap opera in those days, they didn't stop and edit and do all of that. So
that lip lock sunk your career for a bit.
Went out to the world, and 5,000 letters showed up at the network Monday morning.
You're kidding.
Wow.
Our soap opera by the following Friday was #1. We used to always be number 2 or 3 behind General Hospital or Young and Restless. We were #1. People were outraged. But what hurt was I got letters calling me the kind of stuff that my parents were called in the Deep South by people wearing white Wamsucker sheets and carrying crosses that they would burn. It was too hard for me to get my mail before I would go on the air. So they would not give me my fan mail until after I finished for the day.
Well, it was groundbreaking. It changed television, but you also, as you mentioned, lost your job.
Yes.
Was it worth it?
That's a good question. No one's ever asked me that. When I think about it, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. I did go right from being taken off of that show because of the negative fan mail. I mean, they capitulated to the bad fan mail, right into another series. So I only sort of bounced and was down and cried for a bit, and then another NBC series offered me a job, and I said, suck the tears in. So,
but the
was it worth
injustice
it?
of it all had to have hurt.
Listen,
right?
I struggled with that injustice, though, for 2.5 years.
Because that wasn't a script that you wrote. They wrote that script. You were
that's
playing
right.
the part,
That's
and
right.
you end up losing your job.
Not him.
Not him.
Not him.
But you.
And ultimately, when I lost my job, so did the entire black family that was on the show.
Wow.
Because, I had a mother and a father and a brother at the time on the show. And they scripted me away. It was very clever. They took us all the way up to the marriage. And the day of the wedding, my character, who was a doctor, got a research grant to study in Stockholm. Not Stockholm, Georgia.
Well, at least they didn't kill you off. So there's some
So you can
positive
still
in
come
there.
back.
Yes, you
You're
always
still
come back in
alive.
soap
Well, there you
operas.
go. Wouldn't that be interesting? They call now.
Shannon did ask a good question. Was it worth it?
Maybe it was, because it certainly changed the face of daytime. Now they do everything on daytime. Interracial relationships are meaningless on daytime. They have every kind of relationship imaginable. Remember, when you are the one who is kicking in a door, you suffer the broken toes.
Yes.
The door is open for the next person to just sail through. So sometimes when you're pioneering, and I have used this metaphor before, you have the hatchet and you're chopping down the trees because you see there's water up ahead and your arm is tired. If you stop and turn around, you've created a road for someone behind you. So perhaps it was.
Wow.
Thank you so much for being such a trailblazer. My goodness,
Yes,
such a moving
trailblazer.
story.
What a great place to leave it. And we'll look forward to much more success from you. And when can we see the play? When and where?
The play is at the Southampton Cultural Center, and we play until February 23rd. And just call the Southampton Cultural Center for your tickets.
I think
right.
we're taking a trip out to the
Yeah.
Hamptons, Shannon,
Yes,
right?
let's do it, shall we?
All right. It's a date. Don't be late.
That's right. And you're watching Arise Entertainment 360.